Well, hey guys, how's it going today?
Good.
Good.
Going good?
Yeah,
I'm
great.
glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. As you can see, well, those of you who can't see yet, depending on what Kayla puts out onto the social media aspect, we've got a guest with us, Anthony Boggs. I'll introduce him here in a second. Well, yesterday was quite a day for me. What are you laughing at already? You're laughing. All right, so leading up to this, I went to my eye doctor. I'm just really fast forward this thing. Went to my eye doctor a couple months ago, and he says, "Hey, you got this flap over your eye. Can you see well?" I said, "Well, you're the doctor. You tell me how well I can see." He says, "Well, your sight, you got cataracts, you got a whole lot of shit going on in your eyes, but that flap hanging over your eyes, we could do something about that." I was, "Oh, wow, okay, that's okay. It's a medical procedure?" "Yeah, it's a medical procedure." So then I go see the doctor. The doctor tells me, "Yeah, this is a medical procedure." I walk in the gym and I tell everybody what I'm going to do, and they all look at me and laugh and go, "You so stupid son of a bitch! You're vain as can be. You're having plastic surgery."
That was the conversation that was stirring around the gym yesterday was how did Kevin's plastic surgery go?
That was the conversation on Sunday. You were getting made fun of by physicians in the gym. Like, how's your plastic surgery? You excited? What's next?
Son of a gun. So then I didn't wake up because I was awake throughout the whole thing, which is really, really weird. All right. Really weird. And then I look up as I'm being carted back and I see Skyla Doolin, one of my new clients. She's pushing me back to my room. Oh gosh. Anyhow, so you know what? Our bodies. We're gonna segue into this conversation today. Our bodies do kind of age and they decline, and some of it's natural, and some of it you can, you know, mechanically, I guess, fix. Other stuff you can't maybe fix it completely, but you can reverse it. You can add longevity into your life. You can have a better physical fitness throughout your entire life, no matter when you start. But the same probably goes true for financial fitness as well. And that's why we have Anthony Boggs on our show with us today. Anthony, I'm going to read a little bit about Anthony. He will blush if you are watching, but he should blush because this is quite some stuff. And at the end, I'm going to ask him one important question at the very end of this. All right. Anthony Boggs with Northwestern Mutual in 2019 was one of the top 10 Northwestern Mutual interns out of a group of 3,000. In 2021, he went full-time with Northwestern Mutual. And in 2023, he founded Blue Ridge Wealth Management and hired his first-time employee. In 2024, he passed his CFP, his Certified Financial Planner. He passed his CHFC, Chartered Financial Consultant, his CLU, Chartered Life Underwriter, and RICP, Retirement Income Certified Professional. It's a personal professional designation. In 2026, he is now roughly managing 60 million in client assets for over 350 families across 22 states. Now, as I read all of that to you, you might think this guy looks like me, 67 years old, all right, about ready to have eye surgery. But no, Anthony, how old are you?
26.
20 freaking 6 years old. Pretty cool.
And this month.
27 this month.
Yeah,
All
almost
right.
old.
Yeah, almost old. Kayla, talk to him. But now, that's on the financial side. Quite a I think a success story so far. Kayla, has he been a success story in the gym? Be kind.
Pretend like a mouse.
I know I've been thinking, how do I frame this in a positive way? No, I mean, I think the backstory of that is I would say Anthony is kind of like my little brother. So we give each other shit in a joking way. But if people heard me saying that stuff on a podcast, they probably would think it wasn't very nice.
Hey,
But
wait, just a second, Anthony. I got to jump in here. She looks at you as maybe, possibly her younger brother. They look at me. The gym looks at me like her twin.
now they're gonna think you're my younger brother too with your new plastic surgery.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, so Anthony came to me what are we going on? 3 years now.
Yeah,
And
early 23. Yeah.
yeah. And he was the definition of a meathead. So if people know what that is, that's what he was. But through the years, we've worked on, I believe, like functional fitness, worked on some mobility, worked on like how to move properly, um, and increase his aerobic capacity. I think when he came in, he was just kind of lifting weights as heavy as he could, not proper form. Injuries were waiting to happen. Now, granted, he's had a few injuries here or there throughout the years, but overall, I think for long term, and that's kind of been the goal, is to get the mindset to shift into overall health, because life is happening. He's growing up, so his fitness needed to grow up as well.
Yeah.
That's a nice way of putting it.
So he's done all
Need to get my shit together.
like as
Yeah.
far as accolades. I and this conversation will kind of go into that. Like I believe in having multiple assets of fitness, right? Like it's cool to be able to do anything you want on any given Saturday. And that's kind of like where Anthony is if he wants to go do a CrossFit competition, he can. If he wants to go do a triathlon, he can. If he wants to just jump into a 5K and finish in the top 5, he probably can. So it's like that's kind of cool to see how he's, I guess, diversified his fitness over the years and not so like tunnel visioned on one approach.
Yeah. I would have to say I've been there since day one, since he's walked into the gym, and it's just really, really cool to see, what he's now doing, right? What he's now doing. I'll never forget. What are those damn things called? All right. See, I'm not the CrossFit kind of, what are those things you were trying? Muscle ups? Is that what you were trying to do in the very beginning?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Debated my existence for a year.
Oh man. And you got so frustrated, so frustrated. But watching you work with Kayla but also never giving up on that, and just following through and just doing the little things that helped you get better than that. My gosh, the way you're jumping around the gym today is crazy. So how do we jump around this whole fitness and wealth management, and helping? Now, Kayla, you mentioned the word diversified in in activity to becoming healthier. How would you two kind of describe in each of your fields the best way, or how to diversify? And let's start with you, Anthony. Let's say, somebody's coming to you and they don't know what to do. How would you describe diversification in their financial fitness in your world?
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a good place to kick off because whenever you look at diversification, usually you're expecting somebody to say, well, you should own not just Google in a portfolio, but also Walmart or whatever. That's I think what the traditional definition of diversification is. And that kind of stemmed from Warren Buffett, I believe. Like he was him. I think he was kind of the original father of, diversify your portfolio, and he's a hero of mine, and I'm not disregarding that, but I think that diversification is actually a much broader term. And yes, of course, don't put all your eggs in one basket as it pertains to your investments, literally, but also too, how are the places where you're saving money going to be taxed in the future, right? How are they going to be accessed? How are they going to be passed intergenerationally, right? And I think that that is a topic that gets way, way, way overlooked as it pertains to diversification. So, I could take up this full hour, explaining the different, kind of tunnels we can go down in that. But just a quick off the top example. I run into folks all the time who may have they have a 401k through their work available, right? And they probably did the auto enrollment at 5% or maxed out the match or whatever into the pre-tax, meaning tax deductible 401k plan. And that grew and grew and grew, and that's wonderful. But they didn't consider that if you're tax deducting your contributions, you have to pay tax on that at some point. And how is that going to affect your financial plan? Are you maybe going to pay more on the back end than you saved on the front for getting the deduction, right? Because you're getting a deduction on a small number now to pay it on a potentially larger number later in a tax rate environment that you can't predict, right? Because the highest ever federal income tax bracket was 94%. And right now it's 37. So how do you know as a 25 or 35 or 45 or even 55 and 65-year-old that down the line your tax deductions are not going to come back to bite you by being more heavily taxed upon a withdrawal to sustain your lifestyle, right? So do we need to consider a Roth 401k option, which is inevitably going to be available through the employer, right? Rather than a pre-tax? Do we need to consider a mix of the two, right? To add in a deduction now and tax freedom later to, again, diversify your financial plan, right? So I think investments specifically are the most common, Googled example of diversifying a portfolio, but I think that is just the tip of the iceberg, and it actually goes a lot deeper. And I'll touch on that a little bit later, but
Yeah.
that's what I would say off the rip.
As you hear Anthony speak, Kayla, and you hear those words come about a financial plan, what mirrors, what do you think are, I mean, maybe equivalent in the fitness world when it comes to diversifying your health?
Yeah, I think it's almost exactly the same. Um, you have the example of someone, the same thing, younger, and they're putting all their focus on one thing. So that could be sport, that could be an event. So they're a marathon runner, and that's what they do all the time. I think our job as coaches is to get them to look at the future and see how that impacts their future. So they might enjoy running marathons, but it's also like, well, what else are you looking for? Do you have kids? Are you planning on having grandkids? Do you do household chores you need to keep up with? So that's where the components of multifaceted strength or conditioning or flexibility, all those things have to take place for them to be able to live the longest, healthiest, happiest life that they want to live. They can still keep that main focus, the main focus, but you have to spread it out over multiple avenues in your fitness to obtain optimal health, because we aren't sport coaches, so we're not coaching sport. If I was a strictly a marathon running coach, yeah, maybe I don't give a shit about other things outside of there because the goal is that, but that's not what we do. We're coaching overall health and wellness. And I feel like to be at your optimum potential, you have to have everything. So we're meeting lifestyle habits. So you have to have those in place. You have to have strength. You have to have mobility. You have to have flexibility. You have to have endurance. You have to have pacing. You have to understand all of those things and get them all to line up, because that's how you will become your healthiest self.
Yeah. So what I heard both of you kind of say, if I were to say this right, someone just starting investing, they may say, you know what, I want to retire with $2 million, right? And someone might say to you, Kayla, I want to live till I'm 90 years old, right? And then they just, how do we get there, right? And if they're simply just focused on one thing, that might not be the best way to get them there.
Well, and I would kind of add in on that too. I was thinking about this beforehand. Something that I think is a big piece of diversification that gets overlooked is everybody loves to talk about the market, invest in the market, get the best rate of return, this, that, and the other thing. And I subscribe to that. I love that. I mean, I'm a huge nerd for the market. I'm totally passionate about it. But whenever we look um at retirement, right, which is, I would say half the folks I work with are retired and half are planning for retirement. They're in some earlier stage, as young as maybe 18 or kind of right up against retirement. Um, how do we look at quote unquote recession proofing, right? And that would be, the average market correction or crash takes about 30 months to bounce back from. So it's kind of a common consensus amongst my industry that you should have about 30 months worth of your retirement income in a location that is not subject to market volatility, right? Now, what does that do? Well, that allows you to forego any withdrawals from a market-based account in the event you are retired and now living off that nest egg. And therefore, it kind of recession-proofs you, right? And it helps you bounce back immediately, if not incur really any lasting effects whatsoever. And I was kind of thinking about, the similarities of that to fitness. I contracted pneumonia not last month, but the month before. And I kind of blame Kayla for that because I decided to go run a half marathon in like 11-degree weather, which she didn't tell me to do, but she kind of, made me sign up for this half Ironman, and I wanted to see if I could do it. So I went out and ran a half marathon in 11-degree weather against all good judgment and my wife's advice, and contracted pneumonia. And I was thinking about how long would it have taken me to bounce back from that if I hadn't been in the physical condition that I am, which isn't perfect, but it's better than a lot of folks, right? And I think that, especially for older folks, right? If you are not well diversified from the sense that your body can move well, your body has muscle mass, whatever, just the same as you want to recover from a market crash or avoid it, I feel like, I mean, I'm sure, and you guys will be able to speak to it better than me, that having a well-rounded body from muscle, cardiovascular, mobility, you name it, would have to help you recover so much faster from an injury or an illness, right? Which Kayla, I swear I hear you more talk more about. I want to help people make sure they either don't get injured or bounce back from it quickly if it does happen, as much as you maybe talk about wanting people to get stronger, faster, whatever, just for the purpose of performance. Anyway, a little bit of a, ramble, but.
Yeah, well, I think we talk about that quite a bit, and that's something I say often in the gym is, and we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, is if you're doing hard things, it's inevitable that you're going to get injured. Same thing with the market, right? If you're taking the risk, it's inevitable that at some point you're going to hit a low. But if you're smart about the way you do both things, that low doesn't hurt so bad when you're prepared for it. So that's what I say to people all the time when they say they're injured. They shoveled snow last week and they're, man, I'm really sore. I'm like, think about how sore you'd be or how hurt you'd be if you hadn't been going to the gym for the last year. Instead of like a
Yeah.
couple days of a little bit sore or a little bit of a backache, you'd probably be out for a month. So I think getting people to understand that those lows or those crashes are inevitable. It's just setting yourself up to weather them better each time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So the lows and the setbacks and all of that can come into whether you're planning for your financial success or you're planning to have a not so much a lifespan, but like a health span, being healthy throughout the entire time. But let's just say we've got somebody that I'm okay, man. I'm in my 20s. I'm in my 30s. I don't need to worry about this yet. It's okay. It's all okay. Right? What are the consequences of neglecting, our health? I mean, yeah, sure, we can prepare and have these maybe recessions and maybe some setbacks with pneumonia and type things. But man, if we don't do anything now, if we don't begin this journey, what are some of the consequences that we deal with? And are there any maybe some real life stories you can spin into this?
You guys want me to go first?
You're the guest. Go.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So, well, Kevin, you kind of touched on it earlier. You mentioned, using the example of somebody accumulating a $2 million portfolio or something like that. I actually, in preparation for this, wrote out what it would take someone to save per month, starting at different ages, to achieve a $2 million portfolio at the age of 65, assuming their portfolio returns 7%. This is a really oversimplified example. There's a lot of nuance, but starting at age 25, it would take you $760 a month saved at 7% to get to $2 million at 65. Starting at
Dang.
35,
Where were you when I was 25?
I know, right? Starting at 35, it would take $1,520 a month. Starting at 45, it would take $3,300 a month. And starting at 55, it would take $9,700 a month, right? And you may look at that and say, well, the time period shrinks by 10 years each time. And from 25 to 35, the number really only doubles, right? It goes from 760 to about 1520. But then from 35 to 45, it goes up by about, 220%. And then from 45 to 55, it goes up by almost 300%. And that's the effect of compounding, right? And, Kayla, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would have to think that somebody who starts working on their journey in general health and wellness and fitness and growing muscle and improving their cardiovascular health and their balance and their mobility at 25, like you kind of forced me to start doing, right? Because like you said, all I want to do is lift the heaviest weight possible. But you said, hey, maybe let's well round you, right? I would have to think that starting at 25 makes it a lot easier to cruise into 35, 45, 55, and 65 because you've compounded over years and years and years and years. That's the exact same way that it works in the market, right? Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And a lot of folks totally underestimate the power of compounding. And I think that, to give like a real world example here, I think that, a lot of folks, a recent client within the last year or so, all they did was max out their 401k from the time they started working till the time they retired. So they actually started working right about the time the 401k was invented, interestingly. And they maxed it out, which was a much lower number then than it is now. And they retired with a portfolio deep into the seven figures, like just shy of eight figures. And this is not somebody that you would look at and think they're very wealthy, they're very wealthy. All they did was just save the max amount into their 401k that they could, invest it, aggressively to produce return, and just let it compound and add to it every month without thinking about it. And the numbers just became astronomical. And I think folks way underestimate how much compound interest, both from a financial perspective and a physical perspective, can affect you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what comes to my mind is the example of, so we just use the number of a $2 million portfolio. And I know, well, because I work with Anthony, he reverse engineers it. Like, what age do you want to retire? What kind of lifestyle do you want when you retire? Which is hard, even at I'm 37. That's hard for me to like think about. I don't know what I'm doing next year, let alone in 20 years, 25 years from now. So, but I think where the problem is a lot of the times is people focus so much on their financial side, which I agree is like important because you want to retire, you want to live the life you want to live, you want to pass down your wealth to your kids or grandkids, and you worked hard your whole life. But the problem that happens is that people focus so much on saving money, working, doing all these things. Then when they get to that age, they can't use that money anyways because they can't move their bodies. It's like you see it all the time. People work their asses off. They work themselves into the ground. They're worried about saving money, and then when the time comes that they can actually enjoy their money, they can't, their bodies aren't able to do it. So, and also, it goes into play, like just from Anthony and I, right? Is like there are probably a lot more people that are looking for financial guidance because that's a scare tactic to them. It's been beat into us, it's like you have to save money, you have to invest, you have to save to retire. Like that's everybody's like golden standard. But I don't believe in the fitness industry. We have that same like door knocking of like, please help me make it to 65 so I can do all the things that I want to do at 65. So I just wish that somehow, I think financial advisors and fitness coaches should be in the same building because in theory, they're working towards the same thing, the quality of life in retirement. And somehow we have to get through to people that in order to have a quality of life, you have to have a healthy and capable body as well.
I,
Well,
yeah.
and I'll kind
Go
of
ahead.
pile on that just real quick. I feel like when it comes to financial guidance versus, fitness guidance, the financial guidance everyone does feel like is a necessity, as fitness guidance folks might think is more of like a want, right? Like fitness or financial guidance is a need, fitness guidance is a want. And I think the problem is both of them though, even though people feel like it's a need, one's a need and one's a want, both come with fear of judgment, right? And that even if folks feel like they need it, a lot of times they're not willing to ask for it, in my world, right? And I'm sure it's the same in yours, in that they may want it. They definitely need it. They may end up actually wanting it, hopefully, but then they get fear of judgment around it, right? And I mean, I would like to just, for whoever's listening or whatever, just know that I know for you guys and for me, there's the judgment is passed on to folks who think they're too good for advice, right? Not folks who want advice, right? So I think that it's incredibly important to for one realize that folks in my industry could not be more excited to talk to anybody who says, hey, I've got a negative net worth, I've got debt, I'm trying to whatever, and then on the other end where I've got a gazillion dollars that I inherited from my great 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 aunt, whatever, can you help me with it? We're excited to help no matter what, right? And I think the same would be said for you guys because I mean, half the time when I'm in the gym, there are people in there who are the age of my grandparents, right? And it's like, well, we're all in here working towards the same goal, which is get as fit as we can, have as much longevity as we can, and be able to be in a position to enjoy life, right? And I think that, not to monopolize the conversation too much here, but Kayla, you mentioned you save all this money, you save all this money, but then you don't have the ability, with your body to actually use it. And I've, since meeting you, literally developed a piece of my conversations with clients into be like, politely, right? Like, what's your plan for longevity, right? Should we allocate money towards something like that? Because it sure as hell going to be a better use than anything else you're spending your money on right now, other than maybe making sure you're fed and that you have a house, a roof, right? But other than that, I can't really think of anything that would be a better use of your dollar than extending your longevity and making sure that your ability to use money. Yeah. The two ways to fail in retirement are you run out of money before you run out of life, or run out of life before you get the chance to use your money to live it, right? And I think that folks who do not prioritize their health but prioritize their wealth are making a huge mistake, and that all they're doing is making their kids rich, right? Because they're not going to be able to use it. So I'm a big proponent of, we talked about diversification. Save money in locations where you can use it, right? So Kevin, you mentioned, how does diversification play in? And I mentioned tax as just an example, but I said accessibility too. If somebody's saving money in their 401k and just pounding that 401k, it looks awesome at age 65. But what if they get to 55 and on paper have enough money to retire, but they can't actually access it, right? Because it's tied in 99% of scenarios, you're not going to be able to touch it until 59 and a half. I mean, that's when your
Right.
401k becomes available. I swear, as much time convincing folks to save less money into their 401k and more money elsewhere that provides them more accessibility than I do hounding folks to save more money. I swear I spend more time talking about save it in the right spots rather than save more. And Kayla, I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, I fall into that bucket because I've hounded, I kind of, beat it into your brain for years. If you're not careful, you're just going to be the richest person in the cemetery, right? Not the person who's saving all the money for a purpose, right? So I think folks should look into like taxable brokerage accounts, right? I mean, those are, quote unquote, the Wild West, and that there's not, not many rules, right? There's no contribution limits, there's no withdrawal limits. The only thing you have to worry about is paying capital gains taxes on any money you make, right? But you can invest money the same as your 401k, you can invest it the same as a Roth IRA, anything. You can get it whenever you need it. So I think there's a place for that in a portfolio to make sure you can use your money to live your life, right? Because if someone is way overcapitalized for retirement at 60 or 65, or even very well capitalized and has extra money to save, don't just keep making yourself a richer and richer and richer, older person, right? Use some of the money now. You use it now, right? Go ahead and spend it, right? Take your kids on vacation, take your grandkids on vacation, retire early, go part-time, do something. And I can give examples of how somebody would do that, but to your example, Kayla, I agree with you that we should be in the same building, and I think that financial advisors should be talking about, okay, what's the point of this money if you're not alive to use it? And knowing you has kind of encouraged me to do that, right?
So, so we have two more topics scheduled, but now I'm gonna zing one in here just real quickly, because as I listen to both of you, I know in my life, whether I've had a manager, whether I've had a coach, a manager in business that I've respected and that would pour into me and really want to see me grow in my role. Uh, I've seen my development improve at a more rapid pace, having a mentor, having a coach, having someone that I could rely on for good advice, for good guidance. And I can't help but thinking, as I hear both of you speak about the things how you help your clients, I can't help but thinking about, in Kayla's life, TikTok, maybe yours too. Day traders. I mean, all these people that want to go out there and they've got this gimmick here, this gimmick there, this gimmick, and this is how you do it. And I could see where that clouds the minds of people, and the importance of having someone knowing what they're doing. Can you speak on that a little bit? On just your thoughts on having somebody in your corner that knows what they're doing and can help you get there. Kayla, why
I'll
don't you?
start.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is something that it really like it really gets to me is, and I think that it, maybe it's an ego thing for me, but I also feel like it is just it's facts. When people need professional help in a professional setting, sometimes well, I believe most of the time it's easy when it's a financial planner, right? Is like I will go get a financial planner. That's a professional title. If I need my uh, teeth worked on, I will go to a dentist. If I'm in trouble, I'm going to go get an attorney. I'm not going online and Googling, how do I get myself out of this lawsuit? Or I just lost this much money. I need to figure out how to make more money. I'm going to go hire someone, right? And for me, I have enough shit on my plate and I feel like I'm decent with investing and working with my money, but I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to have to follow all the upcoming rules and the changes and this and that. That's why, well, I pay Anthony to do that for me because I don't want to worry about it. Even though if I really put my mind to it, I could probably come up with a strategy. I don't know if it's right, but just the fact of knowing that someone else is taking care of it. But I believe in the fitness world, everybody believes that they can just Google an online template, that they can just go into the gym and figure out what to do on their own. And it's like, why is that such a separation? Like I went to a lot of years of schooling. My entire life has been spent in the some type of fitness world and coaching world since I have been in college. So I have just as much experience, just as much education, just as many certifications as a professional, quote unquote. But somehow people think they can still get a better program with Chat GPT. So I would say, like, if people are listening, obviously this is a plug for me, but I'm saying it because we do it with the other professional settings, such as financial planning, which I believe everybody should have a financial planner, but I also believe everybody should have a fitness coach. And it's not just because you don't know what you're doing, because I know Anthony knew what he was doing when he came in, but I guarantee you by when the time Anthony got to be 40 years old, his body wouldn't be doing those same things anymore. And that's the same thing he just talked about is like, you might know what you're doing and you're doing really well with it right now, but that might not be the best case scenario for you in your future. And so I don't know what the original question was, but it sparked this thought in my mind is if you are someone who cares about longevity and your ultimate well-being, I believe you should have both a financial planner and some type of health and fitness coach. And your question was, how do you cut through like the noise of it all?
Yeah.
That's how you cut through the noise is you just hire a professional because then you don't have to worry about what TikTok and Instagram and whatever else says because you have someone that you're listening to.
Agreed.
Well, I will kind of pile on to what Kayla mentioned. I guess this is a little bit of a testament to, to say in my case specifically, Kayla, but to everybody, all the coaches at OPEX. I get a lot of anxiety thinking about where I would be right now if Kayla, you hadn't like approached me about, us getting together at some point in early 23, which actually, funny enough, was originally to part-time coach at the gym, which is a little bit comedic. And then we realized I'm a much better pupil than I am teacher. So I get a lot of anxiety thinking about that
Hey, you
because
opened the door for me.
yeah, yeah. Um, but like I said, I get a lot of anxiety thinking about that. And when I kind of, I'm a walking billboard for you guys. I'll tell anybody I love the coaching. I love the familial, everything about OPEX I love. And I'm very open, audible about that. But one of the things that I don't think people expect me to say is that yes, I love the training that I get and the expertise that I get and everything. But the reality is like the best part of it is that I get 10x the results I had before I joined with 0% of the cognitive input that I used to have to do, right? Like I don't have to think about it. And I love that. Like there's nothing I love more than not having to think about something and just hand it off to a professional. I'm like the fastest person in the world to just say, okay, can I hire somebody to do this instead of trying to do it on my own? I am not a do-it-yourselfer for anything other than personal finance. And I think that, you know, I've heard the example of, pilots in training school. If they go into a cloud and they stop trusting their instruments, more often than not, they come out of the cloud upside down, right? Because they don't trust their instruments and they make little change, little change, little change, and then they're upside down when they get out of the cloud. The exact same thing I think is pertinent to our world in that I do not believe that 99.99% of folks, unless you do it for a living, are capable of handling their own fitness programming, regimen, everything, or financial planning. And not because they're not smart enough to do it, but because they're too emotionally invested in it, right? In that you have to think about what you're going to do, and then thinking leads to overthinking, and then overthinking leads to unnecessary change just for the sake of making a change, right? And there's a reason that the 95-year-old lady who forgot about a portfolio that she had from 75 years ago has outperformed any major sophisticated well-capitalized investment manager, right? It's because there was no change made, right? They were like, well, darn, I forgot about that, and then they blew the doors off everybody else, right? Because they just didn't have to think about it, right? They didn't think about it, they didn't make changes, right? I think the same thing goes for our world, in that my favorite clients are the ones that just say, what should I do? Not, hey, I made this change, or I did this, or I did whatever. It's like, well, why would you do that? That was not part of the original plan, right? Then same deal goes for you, Kayla. I don't think I've ever said, hey, I changed this, or hey, I want to do this, or hey, I whatever. Like, it's pretty much, just tell me what I need to do so that I can go do it, because there's a 99.9% chance I'm going to get better results, and it takes a whole lot less effort from me.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here now, okay. I'm sitting here at 40 years old. I've just listened to all that you folks had to say.
You
And I'm
lost
kicked
27 years just with that surgery.
after the next one on the 17th when I get my uppers done, right? I just got my lowers done yesterday. But yeah, I might get maybe some, what do they call those things you put in your hair to give it different colors, texture, something like that?
Highlights.
Highlights. I might get highlights.
Oh, those will look cute.
I
You
might
do that.
I mean, maybe we can buy a tanning bed so I can lay in a tanning bed, in the gym. And yeah, all right, dumbass. But I'm sitting here. Let's take somebody who's 40, 50 years old, and they're listening to you talk, and they're talking about, man, how great it would have been if I'd have started when I was 25 in the gym, and if I just put $760 a month away when I was 25 until now. But I haven't done any of that. I haven't done any of that. Am I done? Am I dead? I mean, do I have any hope? Can you provide some hope to someone that's out there and Kayla, I mean, our diversity and diversification in our gym, we've got people like Anthony, but we've also got people coming in that don't even know what gym etiquette means and how to work in a gym, let alone exercise in a gym. But they feel that need. They see that they have that desire. So what can we tell folks out there that might be sitting here at 40, 50 years old, haven't had a financial advisor, hadn't had a coach, haven't really given priority to either of those things, but now want to? What can we tell them?
Well, I think the first thing is, like we always ask, well, what is it that you want to do? So they say what they want to do. So then you just reverse engineer it. If it's 20 years from now when they want to do something, then you reverse engineer it and you put in a plan to get them to that point. And I mean, everybody knows me. I'm pretty blunt and straightforward. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen if you don't start now? Will you get there? No. So it's better to start now and do something, even if it's for a shorter period of time. And I also say too is like, I love getting a client that's a blank slate. Like I love getting a 40-year-old who has never done fitness because they are a blank slate and their training age is actually very young. So you have a lot of room to work with and you can actually see that like exponential growth quicker than if you had someone sometimes that did start at 25 if they didn't do it properly for the last 15 years. Like they're going to have nagging injuries, they're going to have improper form, they're going to have this like story in their head of I need to do this. Well, I used to be able to do this, and when I was this age, I could do this. And it's like when you get a 40 or 50-year-old that hasn't done anything, you can grow them extremely quickly because you're not battling anything else. It's just they just are pure and they want to learn and they want to grow. So that would be my thing is it's better to start now than never, because if you don't start, you're not going to get anywhere you want to go. And if the case is that you haven't, you're a perfect client for us, or you're a perfect client for the gym because your slate is blank. There's a lot of room to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question
Well,
that you even just second, Anthony. I mean, the question you posed to him. If you didn't do anything, if you feel this way now and you don't do anything, what do you think you're going to feel like 10 years from now? Right? So yeah, start now. Plant that tree now, even though it's just a seedling. 10 years from now, it's going to provide that shade that you want it to provide. Anthony, what were you gonna?
Well, I really wasn't going to say much other than just kind of pile on and say that I totally agree. And my response is usually, what's the alternative, right? Beyond starting now, right? Is it you just don't do anything? I mean, I think it's a fairly simple conversation, and I think that especially in my world, just because there's like you, in the fitness world, I think a lot of folks can get a pulse check on where they are and whatever by looking in the mirror to an extent, right? Like that's where a lot of you look in the mirror and say, well, I can tell maybe I'm not where I should be, or maybe I whatever. Now that doesn't mean everything, right? Obviously, there's a whole lot more to it, but in my world, a lot of folks come to me freaking out because they're not, they think they're underprepared, or they think they've got nothing, or they think that they're, heading into this insurmountable task. And I'm telling you, 99% of the time, that is just not even close to the case. And they're actually much better off than they think they are, even if they're looking at their balance sheet or, saying, well, there's not really a lot of numbers on here. There's not whatever. Purely, they're better off than they think they are purely because they don't know all the options available, right? They don't know what's in the system because you can't just go look in the mirror and get an immediate pulse check because there's just not a lot of education around the topic, right? You don't learn this in school. You barely learn it in college if you're a finance major, right? You kind of got to do self-study and figure it out. So, I agree with you, Kayla, that obviously the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now.
Today? Exactly. It's I like that. I like all of those things. But so we've talked about, all right, diversification. We talked about how we can get better. And I think this is where I do want to just advertise for a coach and for you, because the human brain, we sit here, and if we get to a point where we're just talking to ourselves about all the things we can't do, all the things we don't have, and we don't have someone out there making it obvious of the things that are still out there, the things that we still can do, that we become overwhelmed and we just get stuck and we don't move at all. I think that's one of the things that holds that or benefits of finding someone who can at least come alongside, have some compassion, have some expertise to lay that groundwork that no, life isn't over yet. I think they did a study at two cohorts, and I might be blowing this up a little bit or just not being as totally accurate. But what I remember of it is they studied a group of people that were 90 years old, and they looked at their lifestyle, and they saw physical health, health and fitness involved throughout their entire life. They looked at another group, all right, that hadn't done any physical exercise, and their longevity was at like 70, 72 years old at the max. But then they took a group of 40-year-olds and set them up on an exercise regime, and they didn't move their lifespan to 90, quite to 90, but they did improve it to 80, 85, just by adopting these simple little things into their life. So I think there's hope, but I think if we just sit out there and look in the mirror and look at our balance sheet and we go, oh God, I don't know how to get myself out of this. We don't move from that situation. We get stuck. And that's where this is where I'm going to go back to an Anthony, to a Kayla, to myself, more so to Kayla, but, to have someone in your corner to be that light, to be that information. So as we move forward now, what kind of advice would you have, all right, to move forward? Let's close this thing out today with just what are some simple steps if someone hasn't started yet, simple steps, maybe even simple questions. Maybe you've already addressed all of these, but just how can we wrap this up, tie this in a bow? Because my eyes are getting tired. I got to go take a nap.
You got something you want to go? You want me to go first?
Oh, you go ahead, because I might talk for a second on this one.
Well, I think, and I ask this a lot, and Anthony just touched on it, is you have to be honest with yourself, first of all. Like Anthony said, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and you have to be honest with where you are struggling. Obviously, my area is health and fitness. And if you're someone out there and you don't feel like you are where you want to be, or you have tried all the things and you just can't get there, it's like every successful person that I know, including all of us on here, all have a coach of some capacity, because I can look at myself in the mirror and say, I really struggle in this area, so I need to hire help. And most of us have multiple people to help us with those things. And I think that in the fitness world, if you are not where you want to be and you can't figure out how to get there, you have to hire someone to help you. And I also would say if you look at yourself and and what you're doing currently does not set you up for the longest, healthiest, happiest life possible, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. I always use the example of I had a friend a few years ago, and it was like all the eggs, like Anthony said, all the eggs went into one basket. And it was like, and I'm all about like going all for something, like, putting your best effort in. But I don't believe that you should put all of your eggs in one basket and completely neglect everything else. Meaning, you don't neglect your family, you don't neglect your friends, you don't neglect your education, you don't neglect working and actual making a financial future for yourself. You don't neglect all those things to put your eggs in a fitness basket. So I would say if you were someone out there listening, like making sure you are spreading out your life, because we're not just fitness coaches, we are, I would say, health coaches as well. And fitness is part of that, but relationships and your job and your finances, like those are all part of it to try to get yourself the like best wrapped package possible when you enter that retirement age.
Love it.
Well, I was kind of going to give like what my example of looking in the mirror would be for someone if they were going to say, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to take the first step, or I'm going to start moving, but how do you start moving, right? And I did mention that in the world of fitness, you kind of can look in the mirror and get a general sense of where you're at right now. Again, there's more to it than that, but in my world, every first meeting I have with someone is the equivalent of holding up a mirror, right? And kind of saying, okay, well, here's where you are, or where are you, right? Tell me where you're at. And it's kind of what I would deem as like my fact finding mission, if you will. And I was kind of going to give like what my fact finding process looks like, so that if someone was listening to this or sitting at home, or maybe not in front of a financial advisor, but wanted to do it for themselves, or wanted to kind of get prepared to talk to someone, I would start with the end in mind, right? So I would ask, where's my estate planning at right now? Where's my life insurance at, right? When I say the end in mind, I mean death, right? Like the end. Start with the end in mind. Do I have a will drawn up, right? That's a big deal. You don't want your assets going to probate if they don't have to, right? Do I have beneficiaries titled on all of my accounts? Have I talked with an attorney about getting my house titled with a beneficiary? Do I need a trust for my children? Right now, a trust is it's not particularly simple, but in a nutshell, you may want to trust to say, okay, my kids are 10 and 5. If I pass away, obviously they can't get the money themselves and just take it and run. That's going to have to go to someone to act as their guardian and act as their the kind of interim beneficiary for them. A trust kind of circumvents that, and all of your assets land in the trust, and you can say, okay, at age 18, I want my oldest child to get enough money to go to the first year of a 4-year public institution or something like that, right? Then at 25, they get enough for down payment on a house, and 30, they get everything with no strings attached. You're going to have to name a trustee. You're going to have to meet with an attorney, likely to draw up the documents, but do I have that done? Proper life insurance in place, right? Is my debt gone? Is there anything that I would want to happen when I'm alive that I would also want to see happen if I passed away tomorrow, right? That requires money, right? That's where you say, okay, how much life insurance do I need? Obviously, it's better to buy it when you're younger, but I think it's a hugely overlooked topic. The second thing, get a feel for your debt, right? Do you have a lot of consumer debt? Do you have a lot of high interest debt? I think that's a pretty obvious one. The third thing is my savings where it needs to be. Do I have somewhere between 3 and 6 months of cash available for folks to act as like a buffer or an emergency fund? I think if you're a dual income household, 3 months is fine. If you're a single income household, 6 months of your bills in cash is probably where you need to be. After that, do I have adequate disability insurance, see what you've got through your employer. Are they covering in the event you have an injury, illness, something that prevents you from working? What's your salary continuation plan going to be, right? Are you just subject to what your employer's disability insurance is? Do you get nothing at all? Are you going to have to move in with the in-laws? What's the plan at that point? You need to buy a disability insurance policy. Look at that, because your income's likely your biggest asset. You're going to want to insure it. Then, you kind of get into retirement, which is, how am I tracking for retirement? If I strapped a rate of return to my savings and projected it out to age 60 to 65, where am I going to land? Is there going to be enough money to, after tax and adjusted for inflation, create my income or replicate my income so that I don't go to sleep on Friday making 100,000 a year and wake up retired on Monday making 50, right? Because as much as folks convince themselves they can do that, they don't, right? You're not going to do that. Ask yourself, should I be saving in a Roth location to avoid taxes at retirement, or should I be saving in a pre-tax location to get a deduction now and pay taxes later? Do I want to look at how my kids are inheriting money? Okay, because if your children, let's say one child is a physician and the other child, does just constant nonprofit work and doesn't get paid very much, right? Which, noble, but doesn't get paid a lot, right? Do I want the child who makes less money inheriting stuff that is subject to income taxes, right? Excuse me, the child doing nonprofit work to inherit stuff subject to income taxes? And do I want the physician to inherit stuff that maybe is not subject to income taxes? Because we're talking about two different levels of inheritance. If one's got to pay at a higher tax rate than the other, right? Do I want to put stuff in a brokerage account so that I can access it early, right, prior to age 59 and a half? Maybe I'm overcapitalized for retirement. And then the last thing, if you have kids and you want to plan for them, I would say, ask yourself if you want to send them to college, and if so, do you want the money that you save to be exclusive for college? Okay. I'm a really big fan of like juvenile brokerage accounts. They'd be called a UTMA if you were to Google it. And it basically puts money in your child's name in a brokerage account that's not pigeonholed into collegiate use. You can use it for whatever. It can be a down payment on a house. You can fund the account, but then at age 21, under West Virginia law, they have to get the money. You have to give it to them, but you don't get taxed and penalized if it's not used for college. So that's kind of a broader subject because that just depends on what you want. But I think in a nutshell, though, just to kind of wrap up, that would be my version of looking in the mirror. And that was a really fast-paced example of it, but I kind of wanted to give folks something to take away from, right? Like, how can I assess myself? How can I get something actionable? Maybe I want a health savings account, right, to pay for my gym membership on a tax-deductible basis, right? So as long as your physician says you need it, then you could probably use a health savings account to tax deduct your gym membership. I just think there's a lot of things that are out there that folks don't know about, and it's hard to look in the mirror when you don't know all the rules that are at play, right? So that was a little bit of a ramble, but I just wanted to give something to take away. That if you sat down with a pen and paper, where do you start or what do you do? But ultimately, even if you do just Google it or you do it yourself, I think, move one step forward, do something, please, or, reach out to somebody you trust who works in this industry, me, your brother-in-law, whatever, somebody who does this for a living and can help you, because I just can't explain how much you can only win by doing that. So yeah, I'll wrap with that.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway from listening to both of you is, life is not easy. Life isn't just handed to any of us. It doesn't fall from the tree and we can just pluck and get whatever we want. There has to be a plan, whether it's with our health or whether it's with our finances. There has to be a plan, and it's not always easy, and it's going to move on you. All right. Life is going to change. It's going to throw you curveballs, and our ability to adapt, the healthier we are, we can adapt better. If the markets change, we can adapt better. But bottom line is sometimes doing life on your own. And I don't know anyone. I could go in any direction with this. I don't know anyone in this life that's had success that hasn't had someone alongside them, whether it be a parent, all right, whether it be a spouse or a partner, whether it be a friend, whether it be the manager or somebody, whoever. We don't get through life on our own. We just don't, and achieve the success that we want. So if we want to live longer, find someone that can help you live longer. If you want to have more to spend throughout your life and through your life, then find someone that knows what they're doing. And so I really appreciate both of you taking out the time today. I love having a guest. Kayla, what do you think? Having a guest, even though it's Anthony?
No, it is fun. It is fun. And it gets people to not just hear us yapping back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got to think about who we might want to have on next. Maybe we get one of our clients in the gym that's, in that 70, 80 range and just have them talk about their experience and where they might be today had they not been. And I know, I got one that's in the gym right now that's working with both of us. But really good. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. Well, let's see. We've been on here, close to an hour, but I don't want to be the longest ones, but I think it's going to be a very valuable one if people take the time to listen to it. But I do have to care for myself. It's that time of day where I need a nap.
Dear. Well, I have to go cover. I have to hurry up and get to the gym and cover for your ass right now. So you go take a nap and I'll go work for you.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I give a quick shout out to OPEC and the OPEC crew. You guys are great. I'm a huge fan. Kayla, I mean, I know I mentioned you being like my big sisterly figure in my wedding speech, actually. So yeah, I agree with you. Agree with you on that. And then of course, shout out to the 5:45 p.m. session crew, who's my family away from my family, minus Jackson. Just kidding.
All right, guys. See
All
ya.
right.